What's going on, guys? So we got Mike Ficara here, and I'm excited to have Mike shed a little bit of insight on his story into the cigar industry, but what he also did prior to getting into this industry. So, Mike, can you give the audience a little bit of a background on who you are and what exactly you do?
Yeah. So, Nick, first off, thanks for having me on. And thank you to all of you who are listening. Who am I is a long, still ongoing journey I feel like I'm figuring out. I say I'm 44 years old and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I'm on that path. But when I tell the story always kind of goes, I grew up in the 80s, typical kid that wasn't good in school. And it's really the typical entrepreneur story. I just didn't know it when I was growing up. Because when you struggled in school in the 80s, it was like you were either going to, go nowhere or go to college. Those were the two options that kind of your parents presented in front of you. And even society, that was kind of the real narrative there. So never really did good in school, kind of loafed around through middle high school, barely graduated high school and went to community college and kind of just hung out there and, did everything from waiting tables to worked in sales at, Circuit City for a little bit. But one day, one of my old teachers came in and said, "Hey, do you want to be a substitute teacher?" And I'm like, that sounds like the easiest job in the world. So went and did that and actually fell in love with education. I was like, man, that was awesome. And it was at the high school level, which was really cool. And then I went, finished my degree, ended up becoming a teacher. Long story short, when I got my master's, unknowingly went to go work for a startup. That startup got invested in from a guy by the name of Wayne Huizinga. If you don't know who he is, the guy who used to own the Miami Dolphins, Blockbuster, like he was our local billionaire here in South Florida. Was promised everything, stock options, equity, my own private plane. I got none of that. I did get the private 747 a couple times, which was really cool, and watched some Dolphins games in the owner's suite. But when that was over, I was this close to going back to the classroom, and my wife, in her infinite wisdom, said, "Hey, why would you do that? You learned all this stuff. Why don't you help other people and other businesses maybe with what you learned, because you've always been really into business?" And when she said that, it kind of really clicked and made sense. And I've really been doing that. I'm kind of a fractional COO. So I help small to medium-sized businesses grow and scale is kind of my day job. And then one of the companies I'm trying to scale is my own cigar company as well, which I know we're going to dig into.
When we launched, you were one of the first people we actually had reached out to, because we were having some operational issues, and I was just trying to figure out on Cigar Bandz how we could scale the operation. Your content, social media got my attention, man. I love everything you do. So, Mike, I actually didn't realize you worked in the education system for that long. I know you told me you were a substitute, but you were actually a teacher before too, huh?
Yeah. I taught ethics. Yeah, I taught ethics and Bible for the better part of a decade, which was ironic. I went to Catholic school. Like I said, my parents sent me to Catholic school because I was kind of a bad kid in middle school. And I didn't, I really didn't get into my junior, senior year. But once I did, I really fell in love with it. And, like I said, it kind of was something I really enjoyed. I taught in the early, mid 2000s to like the early 2010s. And that was before podcasting was big and a lot of the technology in classroom, iPads were just coming out. So I was like playing around with all that stuff before anybody was. Like I had a Twitter feed for my class. I had a podcast where my kids had to go listen to my review. I put lessons on YouTube. I mean, all this stuff was quote unquote revolutionary back then, which is why I got my master's in educational technology. So it kind of balanced out in that way.
You stumbled into entrepreneurship, which I feel like, most people do. What exactly is, I know you promote it. What is an outsourced COO?
It's a good question, and I say, like you said, I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship, and a lot of my clients are people who accidentally started a business. I like to say, it's a side hustle where it's like, oh, all of a sudden, they're like, wait a second, all of a sudden, this has grown into like a real business. I'm still a one-arm paper hanger. I'm doing it myself, or most of the clients I work with, and they usually say, okay, maybe I've hired a few people and things aren't going right, or, I work with businesses where they're making $3, $4, $5 million a year. They're bringing that cash in, but they're not taking that amount home, and they can't figure out why. So I kind of come in and be like, okay, you don't need a full-time COO because that could be really expensive and they can't always afford it. But if you bring me in fractionally, I could be like, okay, here's how we right the ship. We put some systems in, we tweak some things here or there, and then that's where the growth really happens.
Got it. And I know you've been smoking cigars for a while, and you've been dabbling with the idea of getting into the industry for quite some time. I mean, for as long as I've known you. So what sparked you wanting to get into the cigar industry, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that goes probably back to about the same time I was kind of became a substitute teacher. My uncle Johnny Cigar, and I kind of mentioned growing up in the 80s and 90s. During that time, this is how I'm starting to sound old. It was different back then. Like my parents weren't smokers. My dad smoked cigars now. He really didn't smoke them when I was a kid, but they weren't smokers. But when you had family over for dinners or parties or things like that, and you woke up the next morning, your house smelled like a cigar lounge. I mean, there were people smoking cigars and cigarettes. Like that was almost like from aside of the smell of the food and the Christmas tree, that's how you knew it was the holidays. Like,
I think
yeah,
Italians take the par with Cubans for cigar smoking.
yeah, we really did. And one of the things that as a kid I didn't like it. I'm like, oh, I don't like that smell, blah blah. You're a kid. But as I became an adult, we had one uncle that smoked a lot. His name was Uncle Johnny Cigar, and he always smoked a cigar. He always had a cigar in the mouth. I tell the story. One time we went to the beach with him. He was smoking a cigar. He went under the water, came up, cigar went into his mouth, still lit. I don't know how he did it. And
Superpower right there.
yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. He's gonna be the next Marvel hero, maybe. But but when he passed away, we kind of celebrated him by smoking cigars, and that's really kind of how I got into it. And then it was like early 2000s when the cigar boom was happening as well. So my dad, and then when I started dating my wife, my father-in-law was a smoker, so it kind of just became a big part of our family and kind of celebrations. And then now it's become a habit.
My question for you, Mike, when you decided to launch, what was the determining factor in, okay, I'm gonna go through with this. I'm gonna get my own blend developed. I'm gonna start my line, create a band. What was the determining factor in that? Because it's a lot of work, man. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, we specialize in private labeling. It's not an easy task to complete. So what was the determining factor for you to say, okay, I'm gonna pull the trigger on this and actually make it happen?
Yeah, it's funny. We launched in 2024, but it was really a 4-year process. And going back to my teaching roots, I decided, I think it was like 2019, 2020, I really wanted to do this. I kind of always in the back of my head, hey, I want to launch my own cigar. And ironically, one of my former students posted on Facebook that he was working for a cigar company. So I messaged him, and his name's Pierre Jamie, and he works with Humanif Group. They design a lot of cigar boxes and accessories. And I messaged him and I said, hey, I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. I'm kind of thinking to start my own cigar line. I figured maybe I could talk to him and he would, maybe provide me with some insight. And when we did that, of course, we get to talking and he asked me, much like you did, well, what is it that you do? And I explained, kind of being an outsourced COO. And he's like, oh man, this company I just started working for, they need to hire you. So of course they ended up hiring me. I'm like, great, I'm going to
do some excellent work, huh?
Yeah. They really do some cool stuff, man. They really make a lot of neat stuff. We're doing a special humidor PCA too, and they're still a client of mine. But I thought signing them as a client, man, I'll have my cigar line launched in 3 weeks. Like, this is going to be great. I'm going to get the inside scoop. And to be honest, it was really working with them that I learned how hard this actually is. This isn't just slapping a band on a stick. There's a lot more to that. And I knew I wanted to do it. And through working with them, I kind of learned the process and learned what happened. And I really wanted to do it, though, it's just the entrepreneurial bug in me, I think, and it was one of those things where I'm Italian, I smoke cigars. Like you said, it's a big part of my social media. It's always been, it's been a kind of a big part of my brand. And I said, man, I really would love to have my own cigar. And a way to honor kind of like my family legacy. A big part of it is honoring my father. He's on the inside of the box, with my family. And I really just want to honor my heritage and my family. And I named it Guido Cigars because my wife and I have 4 kids. And I always wanted to name one of the kids Guido and let me. So I said, well, I'm going to name the cigars Guido.
What does Guido mean, man? I catch myself saying it every time I see your post because it rolls off the tongue nice, but I have no clue what it means.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. Like there's a lot of Italians. It's an Italian name, right? Guido is the name of a lot of Italians, but it's also kind of a slur, right? It's almost a racial slur for Italians and was used like that in a lot of ways. People use it as derogatory. Oh, they're a bunch of Guidos. The Jersey Shore guys are referred to as Guidos. It was really a slang negative thing. So it's always been a strong Italian name. But it's something when Italian immigrants came over to America, people used to sort of, call them, basically a negative stereotype. So that's why my wife was against naming one of our kids that. So I really wanted to do it because I'm like, man, if I name these cigars Guido and I see it, and like you said now, like you're like, oh, I love it. I hear it. It makes me happy. It makes me excited. I wanted to associate it with something positive. Not that I'm going to change the meaning for all Italian Americans, but it's worth a shot,
I saw one of my buddies who's also Italian post on social media. He posted with the cowboy hat, Guido boy, and I immediately was like, that was the first time I've heard anyone use that word outside of Mike's brand. So when I reached out to my buddy, I was like, hey, you got to check out Guido Cigars.
Yeah. So it's worked out. Yeah. Anytime someone posts anything Guido, though, now I'm getting referred or they're tagging me in it. So it's been a great marketing technique.
You're very prideful person, which is really cool, because my family's just like that as well. I'm Cuban and Lebanese. So tying it into the Italian culture, was that always the game plan for you?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think so. I've got a lot of respect, like I said, from working with Human Groove and the cigar industry. Obviously, there's a very big connection to Latin and South America, especially Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, Cuba. There's a lot of, I think, Latin influence, and like you said, Italians used to love going to Cuba, and I mean, there's
Yes.
a lot of rich Italian history connected to Cuba. Yeah, it was important to me for that, but I never felt like there was one Italian cigar. There are some, and you've seen them around, and they're a little bit different. But I wanted something that celebrated Italian Americans and kind
Right.
of that culture. CAO Italians, I love. I think they're branded to that. They're not really that much of Italian, but they are one of my favorite cigars. Got a lot of
Yeah,
respect for
yeah.
them.
I haven't personally worked with anyone that's like, okay, we're gonna dive into the culture of what it's like to be Italian American. And that kind of brings me to my next question. This being a business owner, Mike, advertising is key with every business, but working in the cigar industry, it's not like other industries where you can advertise on social media and run ads. You've done a really good job promoting your product. And I don't know how long you've been in business now. It's been few months or a year,
Yeah,
right?
it's been about since September, October we launched about 4 months now. Yeah.
What's been some of your experience with advertising in the cigar space?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you look, there's a lot of restrictions, right? You can't run Facebook ads, you can't do certain things like that. You can't boost posts, you can't do a lot of the normal, maybe techniques and path that you would do. And a lot of people may look at that as hurdles and negatives. I think it's a positive because I think a lot of businesses have some of those avenues and it's easier. If I were to ask you, Nick, name me a cigar brand besides mine.
Padron.
Padron, that's a last name. You know what I mean? Perdermo, that's a last name. AJ Fernandez, that's a name. Like, this industry is a personal brand industry, which, you hear in traditional marketing channels, everyone's saying that. People don't buy from companies, they buy from people. And so many CEOs are trying to brand themselves nowadays. So the thing for me, and you mentioned I've been doing content for a while. So from a marketing standpoint, it wasn't that hard in the traditional sense of creating content because I've been doing that for a while. So I think with cigars, you have to go the personal brand thing. And I have a video that's pinned on my Guido Cigar page where Adam from Dreamer Cigars, who kind of helped me get everything going, he asked me, what's the goal of Guido Cigars? I said, it's to create a community. And really, that's been the marketing strategy to what you kind of said is I'm just putting content out there, telling my story. And to be honest with you, it's worked better than anything I've ever done because it's really drawn people into it. Whereas if maybe I was running ads or taking out advertisements in a magazine or doing some things like that, it would have been harder because I would have been competing. But I was surprised at how quickly we sold out of our first run pretty much. I think I've got a couple hundred cigars left now. I already
Right.
ordered the second run. So that being said, it went much better than I expected. And it went much faster than I expected. I think because I decided to connect with people and tell my story about my Italian heritage in cigars, not just this is a great cigar with hints of pepper and it paired with, a 1924 Cabernet. Like, nobody wants to hear that crap. I'm like, hey, I kid around. I do funny stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of been the methodology for me.
I always kind of question this because I see a bunch of different types of brands that go different routes with their marketing and advertising. You don't do too many events, right? Or are you doing events yet with your brand?
But yeah, I've been doing, but both traditional and non-traditional cigar events. So I've been doing a lot of galas and, I had a buddy of mine, he's at an event right now in Vegas. He says, hey, I want to buy a box to hand it out. It's a logistics convention. I had another buddy of mine call me this morning and said, hey, listen, I was having dinner with somebody last night. They're doing an event on the beach in the end of February. It's a fire safety event and they're having a party and they wanted to have cigars out there. And you're the first person I talked to. So I haven't been doing traditional cigar events, but I've been doing more like
lights going, people that might.
sponsored events and different things where people may be smoking. I haven't done. I'm going to go out to PCA. I'm going to be out there, not necessarily promoting the cigars, but I will say one of the things is, and I think this is big for everybody in the boutique cigar industry, is I have a lot of respect for the big boys. Like, I don't think I'm there yet. I got to earn my place to go really work some of these larger events and promote in some of these larger events because I feel like I want to give the industry the respect it deserves and, put this out there, get feedback from people, see what's good, see what's not good. I just don't want to show them, be like, hey, I created a cigar yesterday, is it okay if I sell it here?
And I think you've been doing just that, man. I mean, I think you're doing a phenomenal job educating your clients, also tying back into the culture of your brand and why you guys got started in the first place. Now, would you, Mike, say that for someone that wants to start in the cigar industry, is it higher leverage for them to focus more on the social media aspect of their brand? or is it a better idea to start just going to events? Because those are kind of the two, different ways we see people advertise their cigars. And I'm always kind of torn between what works better, but I guess it's subjective. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. What works best for you. I mean, if you have time to go to events and you have the bandwidth and the cash, great. Yeah, man. I mean, events are a great place to go. But you mentioned some of the big boys, like that's who you're competing against. And, one of the big things for me was even price point, because I think, we're at about $15 a stick right now, but you can walk into any humidor in the United States and you can get some really good cigars from probably like a good $9 to $12 mark. You really got to have a reason that people want to purchase your cigars. So to answer your question, I think, to go to a trade show or an event or try to get into a cigar lounge, like I've gotten into a few cigar lounges just by being on social media. People were like, we saw this, we're going to believe it. I had to get it in my lounge. Not a selling tour or anything.
And that was similar to what you were representing, right?
Yeah, and it's like, hey, we have an Italian group that meets here once a week. We wanted to have something for them. Like it tied in. So, sometimes at the bigger cigar events, you're gonna get eaten up basically. And I know because I've been to a lot of them, and that's okay. Like it's businesses are like kids. I mean, like I'm a baby business. You wouldn't take a baby. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's going to Las Vegas. He's like, yeah, it's like Disney for adults. Of course, I take a baby to Vegas. People do. I don't understand that, but it's nothing for a baby to really do in Vegas. Take a baby to Disney, they're going to be as happy as ever. You know what I mean? You got to figure out where's your business going to be happy at the stage it's in. And I think social media is really the first place you have to start, because social media does not lie. You know what I mean? If you have a brand and it's good, now, I'm not going to say you're going to go viral and get millions of likes, but you'll really see if your friends and family will purchase it. If you start connecting with people in the cigar industry, if you start getting on podcasts like this and you start telling your story and, one person buys a sample pack or one person buys a box, then you're like, okay, maybe I'm on to something now. I think if you're not starting though marketing on social media, you're missing out. And if you want to start your own cigar brand and you don't want to be on social media, you don't want to tell the story. And listen, the big boys are on there. I mean, a lot of these guys are very active on social media. Why? Because that's one of the only ways they get advertise and market, and B, it's the quickest way to connect with people. And every business is doing it. So if you don't want to be on social media, don't start a cigar brand, in my opinion.
You hit the nail right on the head, man. I see a lot of people get into this industry and they look at companies like Drew Estates, Padron, Perdomo, some of the big families, AJ Fernandez, and they look at them as inspiration, but these guys have such a large market share. It's unbelievable how many cigars Drew Estates actually pushes out into market. So as someone just getting into the industry, it's probably a better idea for them to kind of niche down initially while they're starting and focus on a specific demographic or target for a period of time. Now, what would you say, if you were to do this all over again, what would you recommend someone getting into the space to do, like in terms of identifying a niche for themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, and you mentioned Drew Estate, and JD Drew, we all know his story. I mean, the guy went down to Nicaragua and basically figured the whole industry out, right? And I mean, now he's a powerhouse. Nick Perdomo had Nick Sticks for a while and, really had to get in there and figure it out. I mean, My Father's Cigar, the history there, you got to decide who do you want to be, I don't think, and if it happens, it'd be great. If Guido Cigars grows up to be a Perdomo or something like that, I don't think that's going to happen. My goal is to maybe carve out a little piece, in the industry, make a few people happy, and kind of fund my habit, if you will. So I think you got to look at what you're going, and you got to be realistic about it. And you look at Ferriotego, Michael Herklocks, you look at Don Derrotero, you look at a lot of these smaller brands, you look at Nova Cigars, a lot of these smaller brands that are putting in the effort to really establish themselves in the industry, what they're doing. And these people are experts, right? Like Michael Herklocks is second to none. I mean, these guys are on the cutting edge. And I've also worked with a lot of celebrities. We did, at Humidor, we did Chado Tocinco Cigars, we did Ed Reed Cigars. You got to decide who do you want to be in the industry, and there's been a lot of celebrities too that we've come across and talked to, and when they found out to start a cigar brand, man, that's going to be a lot of work. I just want to do something for fun. While there's a fun aspect of it, I think if you're really thinking about doing this, you got to ask yourself, like, who do you want to sell to, and why do you want to do this, and what do you want this to look like? I mean, that would probably be the third question. And if it doesn't have a clear path, or you're really not sure, it's an expensive hobby to go to have. It's even more expensive hobby to do as a business,
Right. I think it can be really overwhelming for people, looking at cigars as a potential business venture, because I think a lot of people look at it and it's kind of one of those things where there's shiny object syndrome. I mean, we all affiliate cigars with class and wealth, but being in the industry, that's not always the case. So I think one of the things that we've noticed, at least with our clients, some of the people we work with, is people can get very overwhelmed and they look at these big companies as inspiration. And I don't think it's a great place to start for their personal brands. I think looking at a company like yours who has a market, has a demographic, has a specific type of buyer that you're going after is the best decision you can make getting into this industry. So I'm glad you touched on that because I think that's going to help a lot of people. It's not an easy space and nothing in this industry happens overnight.
Yeah, yeah, and find the right person to work with too. I think that's the other big thing. You and I have done some stuff together, and that's
Yeah.
great. I learned a lot from you. You really helped me take it to the next step. Working with Adam at Dreamer Cigars, he really helped me out a lot and kind of getting some things we're doing on the marketing side and
Right.
getting it launched. So I mean, you got to find it's like dating, right? You got to find the right partner, and you really got to vet people out too. But that being said, what I've learned since launch is there's a lot of people, and we have some things in the works right now. I'm really excited. There's a lot of people in the industry that are some of the big guys that once you prove you're willing to commit to that and you respect the industry, they're willing to work with you. So
Exactly.
I've got some exciting things ahead that I'm really proud of that we've been able to do in a short time. So
It's a small industry, man. I
yeah,
mean,
it really is. Yeah,
it's not like the tech industry or the finance industry. I mean, it really is family ran businesses. Farmhouse Blend Cigar Bands are owned by my brother and I. Most of the companies in this industry are third generation families that have been growing and rolling tobacco for
yep,
some centuries, right? JC Newman family, for example.
yeah.
So I'm glad we touched on that because I think that's going to help a lot of people. So right now, Mike, how many cigars have you released?
So I just had the one line. The Guido signature is the current one line we have out. Like I said, we have a couple other things in the works. I mentioned we sold out. I did another rolling of the Guido signature. We were only supposed to do one, and then we were able to do another one because we saw it was selling so fast, and we had some things at the end of the year that worked out. So we're doing a second run of the Guido signature now. That'll probably be the last run of it. And then I'm going to work on, like I said, I wanted to perfect it. And, I always say too, I'm a cigar enthusiast, not a connoisseur. So I couldn't tell you I listen, I know it's a Ecuadorian wrapper, Nicaraguan binder and filler. I can't tell you, it has hints of chocolate and terra. I don't know. It's a fucking good cigar.
Canadian peanuts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I don't know, it
Yeah.
tastes good. I like it. So I
Right.
really don't want that to be I always want my cigars to be accessible in that way though. I don't want to overcomplicate the process because the idea behind this is like, I want people to walk into humidors one day and be like, what should I smoke with their friend that doesn't smoke or their client that doesn't smoke and be like, what should I smoke? Oh, Guido Cigar is a great cigar for you to try for your first cigar. That's my goal. Yeah.
Was that always the game plan for this first line, or did it
Yeah.
take some time? It was always the game plan.
Yeah. Simplicity was always the game plan. We went through a couple different blends. And of course, I was getting cigar after cigar, and then they accidentally sent me one they weren't supposed to send me. They're like, oh, no, we weren't supposed to send you that blend. And then I smoked it, and I'm like, that's the one though. I'm like, because the size it was a little bit, it was a 6x60, and I was like,
Right.
yeah, like we're thinking to do something a little bit small. I'm like, nope. And then I'm like, it's got to be that size, that smoke. It had the perfect draw, it had the perfect everything. Like it was just like a great smoke. I'm like, that's the one. So if not, we don't have to do it. I'm okay with it. Like I'll save the money, but that's the one. That's the one.
So you've been involved in a lot of businesses, Mike. Would you say the venture of getting your cigar brand started has been your favorite project yet?
Yeah, it really has because, I'm kind of a fugazi entrepreneur because really as an outsourced COO, I've always helped other people with their businesses. That's kind of been my business. So it's kind of a fake business. This was the first time I actually kind of ate my own dog food. And I really launched my own product, launched the site, sold it, marketed it, did it on my own. So I kid around and say I've been doing entrepreneurship for about probably 15 years, but this is really my first business. So I'm really excited about that.
So where do you guys see? And I know we touched on it a little bit. What's your 5-year plan, Guido Cigars?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 5-year plan is I really want to what I spoke about a little bit earlier. I really want to get it in the more shops. I think would ultimately be the goal where people walk in and I really want to get the price point down, to be honest with you, because I want it to be accessible and competitive with the price of some of the, because like I said, if you could buy a Perdomo champagne for the same price as, for less money than my cigar, you should pick the Perdomo champagne up. I'll be honest with you, because it's a better cigar. So I want to get my price point down so it's accessible to everybody at that one point. That's really the 5-year plan. And then, like I said, to get into more stores, I just think it's going to be neat that, like you said, oh, Guido, I've heard of that, or I've seen it on social media, or I know that. I think that would be a cool thing. So that's really the goal, is just to make it more accessible to more people, and then more people have these Guido moments. I get pictures all the time. Super Bowl people were texting me pictures of them smoking it. My buddy at the convention in LA sends me a picture of them smoking it. I love getting tagged in pictures on social media, or friends of mine sending me pictures I'm smoking. And so I just want my phone to be dinging 24/7.
Right.
That's the goal, man. That's
And
the goal.
it's not easy to get your cigar in a lounge. I think this is
Yeah,
one
it's
of
hard.
the areas that when people start, they think, okay, I'm gonna get a cigar line and I'm gonna be able to distribute it into a lounge because I have my own cigar line. Lounges get such an influx of inventory. I mean, dude, like some lounges have an obligation to push products like Davidoff LFD because
Yes,
the plans to carry the merchandise are like 25, 30,000 on the high end. Some go up to $50,000. So a lot of the times when you're getting started in the industry and you don't have a brand or you don't have, people that are actively reaching out for your product, these lounges are going to want your cigars on consignment. And that's a retailer's worst nightmare, right? Because
for
why
sure.
would you want your cigars on consignment when you could be selling them through your sales channel, like what you're doing on social media? So it takes time to get into the lounges, but you're doing it. You're building brand, you're building community. And some of the retailers that we work with, I'll give you an example. Silent Hero Cigars, he works with veterans with PTSD. Super mission statement, does a lot of greatness for the community and in the market that he wants to work with. And, now he has lounges asking for his product. It's not every lounge, right? But it's lounges that he wants to work with. That's kind of where you hit it out. I get so excited to see your videos on social
Thanks,
media.
man.
Let's kind of dive deeper on an opinion-based question that I hear a lot of people talk about. How important would you say brand aesthetic over the actual blend is? Or what would you say is more important? I guess I should preface.
It's hard. That's a hard question, and I think you hit on something earlier about the other company. It's mission, right? Like what's your mission then with this, and with the cigar? I think every cigar brand tells a story of where it begins. So if you don't have a quality cigar, like how do you start your brand story? I mean, that's really the key to it. And you mentioned this is a luxury industry. I mentioned PCA earlier. This industry is constantly fighting to say that we are not associated with, flavored tobacco. We're not associated with cigarettes. We're not associated with vapes. We're not associated with these other products out there because we are a premium cigar. This is a premium cigar industry, and I think if you're not going to create that for the industry, you're not going to be a part of the industry. It's tough, chicken and egg scenario there.
I always hear people in the cigar industry talk about first impressions, and when you really break it down, first impressions in the cigar industry extend so much deeper than, visual aesthetics, like what you're actually looking at. Obviously, the branding plays a part in, the aesthetics or first impression, but also the first smoke, like the first drag of the cigar. I mean, there's so many little details that play a part in the first impression of a quality cigar or brand per se. It's always been hard for me to pinpoint. It is kind of like the chicken and the egg. I
Yeah,
guess that's
yeah.
a good way to describe it. Um, what is outside of Guido Cigars now, Mike? What is your go-to cigar?
The Perdomo champagne.
Yeah.
That's one I really like. The Seo Italias are kind of another go-to. Anything that my father makes is like candy to me. That's the Reese's peanut butter cup of cigars for me. Like I could eat smoke those all day. Like they're the best. I mean those are really the ones that kind of have in heavy rotation. I really enjoy, like I mentioned Michael Hurtlocks earlier, the Ferro Tego Metropolitans are like one of my favorite, I think, discoveries of the last 2 years. That's a cigar that I've had for the first time that I've really enjoyed. Dio Merta cigars done by the Sopranos guys are also really good. They got a couple different lines that I've just really enjoyed. They got a really nice Maduro. So there's a lot of I kind of like, a little bit of everything. I'd say there's no cigar I don't like. And I smoke in my office. So I built this office in my garage during COVID. So it's not connected to the house. So I smoke a lot more now than I used to.
I got some guys on my team, man. They smoke 12, 13 cigars a day.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, there are some days, I'm not going to lie.
I see some people that are really loyal to specific cigars. And the reason why I ask that is there's some people that like to dibble and dabble and try different blends.
Yeah.
And in the cigar industry, man, it's really all personal preference. Some people find a cigar that they really like and they don't stray away from that stick for 5, 10 years. But then there's guys like me and you. I like to try different things every now and then. I am loyal to a few different blends, but I try and keep my palate open. Do you tend to lean more towards like lighter cigars, or do you tend to lean more towards bolder cigars?
Depends on how much I'm drinking, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
No, I do. I'm a big, to be honest with you, I'm a big coffee and cigar guy.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy, so sometimes like if I'm, yeah, my office during the day, I can't, I like something light because it's just, you're hanging out. But if I'm going to go to like a cigar lounge and, a couple of times, I love going to Corona Cigar Lounge on Sand Lake there in Orlando.
Dan Lake, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
when
where,
I'm in Orlando for business, that's my favorite one. But I've
yeah,
gotten there more than a few times when they first open. And, I go and get the darkest, strongest, just thickest cigar I can find. And then I'll get like a double espresso and a Sambuca.
that's awesome. Have you been to the downtown location?
Yes, I've been to the downtown one. I know they opened up a new one too. I forget where the new one is. I haven't been to the new one though. There's another one they just opened too in
Well,
I'm gonna draw a
they
blank.
they used to have I think they used to have the Davidoff Lounge in Tampa, and I think it's now Corona if I'm not mistaken. I might be mixing it up with something.
I think so, but I think I saw the Sand Lake one. I think is a Drew Estate Lounge, an official Drew Estate lounge
Which
now.
one was that?
The Sand Lake one's at a Drew Estate Lounge now. I think.
Really?
I think I saw that on social media. Don't quote me on that, but
I'll have to double check out, after
yeah.
this podcast, man. So Mike, we're kind of nearing the end of this podcast, and for someone trying to get into the industry, what's a pointer that you can give them if they're trying to get started with their own line of cigars, or maybe they want to own a lounge? What could you recommend as a good starting point for them? Where should they do research? Who should they look for?
Yeah, I mean, the first piece of advice I'll give, and I know I've said things about how difficult it is and how hard it is, and I think everyone's going to tell you a lot of the negative. The first piece of advice I'll give is ignore the negative. Everything in life is hard. You want to do it, go do it. The second thing is I think, you got to find, like in anything, in any business, find the right mentors, someone like yourself that knows the industry or has access to good cigars and can guide you along the way. I mean, you want to open a shop, spend some time in the shops in your area, ask the owners what it's been like. I think finding the right mentor or somebody to guide you, I think is really the first step. And I think researching it, PCA, I think is an amazing organization, does some amazing things for the cigar industry. Attend to your point earlier though, attend some events, go to a Barn Smoker by Drew Estate, go to TPE, go to PCA, attend a local event, like find events where you can learn more about the industry. Because I think from, like you mentioned, from the outside, I think the cigar industry is kind of funny because a lot of people go to a restaurant and never think about opening a restaurant, but they'll smoke a cigar and think about starting their own cigar line. So it's just as complicated as opening a restaurant. So, I mean, find chefs, talk to tobacconists, and reach out to people on social media. I think that's the other thing. There's so many smart people out there in the industry. You'd be surprised how many of these guys are willing to talk to you. Find the experts, find the Michael Herklocks, find the, Rick from West Tampa. I mean, like, go talk to these guys. These are the guys that have done it. They're amazing tobacconists, and they could tell you the stories and where to go and where to begin.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think if you want to get into the cigar industry, it's not like other spaces where there's resources readily available online. You have to actively seek those resources. You have to go to events. You have to message people online. I mean, man, we wrote an article 8 months ago on how to start a cigar brand, and it's the #1 ranking article on how to start a cigar brand. And I haven't been in the industry for that long, right? So, there's not a lot of resources. This is a predominantly Latin American industry. Big understanding for most people is to get started, you have to go overseas to Nicaragua or Dominican Republic, which is somewhat true, but you didn't do that, right? You were able to kind of find your foothold by reaching out to people and doing what you do best, which is network. I think you hit it right on the money with that. To get started in this space, you have to actively reach out to people and find good mentors. And it takes time. If someone wants to start a cigar line, you hit it earlier on, you said starting a cigar line is not just putting a band on a cigar, right? Anyone can do that. If you want to actively start a cigar brand and do it right, how long would you say that process takes?
I mean, for me, like I said, I don't know. I've only done it for me. So I would say for me, it was probably about a 4 or 5 year process, because it was also finding the right person that could help me out. And like you said, without flying to the DR or Nicaragua, which you don't have to do. You just got to your point. You got to network and find the right person. But I think it's, if you're serious about it from like conception to idea, to logo, to box design, to finding the right blend, to finding the cigars, and then the importing process is, a crapshoot. I mean, like, I didn't expect to get the cigars till January. They came in September, but I've also seen people that expect something in September and don't get it till March. I mean, you got to be, my father has an old saying, thank God for the flexible because they never get bent out of shape. I mean, it is a process, man. So you got to be patient and you got to be flexible.
Mike, man, I love your sayings, bro. They're the best, man. I hope one day to acquire some sayings like that in my speech, man. That's my
Yeah,
it's fucking cool, man. You
I
got
love
them
it.
right on. Well, Mike, man, that's pretty much it. So for someone that wants to learn a little bit more about your business, where can they find you? Social media, you have a website?
Yeah. Basically, for more about me, MikeFicara.com. It's got kind of all my personal, business stuff, links to my Instagram and LinkedIn, where I do also talk about cigars. But for the cigars, for the Guido Cigars themselves, it's just GuidoCigars.com. Once again, Guido Cigars as well on all social media handles. To go back to your marketing thing, that's a piece of marketing advice. Make sure you get the handle for your cigar brand too. Make sure someone else doesn't have it. Like if you're Guido Cigars 1, that's not going to work. You got to be the Guido Cigars, So, but yep, that's where to find me.
Awesome. Well, Mike, I'll make sure we plug that into the details here, man. Dude, it was great chatting with you. I always love connecting with you. And hopefully I'll be out in the Fort Lauderdale area soon so we can reconnect while
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. We got to break bread soon, my friend. We'll have a
Yeah,
steak.
yeah, man. You're gonna have to show me some of those steak recipes, bro.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I got you.
All right, anyway, take it easy, man.
Thanks, Nick.
Have a good one.